It's almost like the music was written for this man specifically. And I mean, let's pull it back just a little bit here. Yes, it absolutely was with this gentleman in mind, because I'm talking about the most entertaining man in sports entertainment who doesn't even do any sports entertaining. He's just downright entertaining. I'm talking about RJ City, superstar for AEW. I don't know about AEW, but how you doing, RJ?
Let's pull it back even further. Are you familiar with when Frank Sinatra beat up that guy in a restaurant?
I mean, I can't deny or confirm those allegations.
And then he allegedly went on the run, and Sammy Davis Jr. is on Dick Cavett, and Cavett asks him, like, hey, where is he?
Could you imagine? Like you're going to get Sammy to stooge on Frank, first of all.
And then I love the, like, okay, let's get back in the studio and do 3 coins in a fountain, and maybe everyone will submit this.
Why not? Dean Martin's just sitting there drunk the entire time, doesn't understand what's going on.
My understanding is that he wasn't really the drunk.
Well, I'm sure that there was a lot bigger drunks in there.
But first of all, that they were all drunks.
Yeah.
That's fair to say.
It's amazing. So, all right, RJ, I just want to do this right out the gate here. Maybe we clip this and save it for next time, but I have to ask you, tell me about your time working for AEW. Was that experience good or not?
Sure. It's done. Did you get a memo? It's always been like every week. I'm like, are you sure I'm doing this?
Right?
Like, okay with everyone.
Have you had to wake up yet and been like, oh, maybe they forgot to put my check in this week?
No, they certainly forgot to put my graphic in.
Oh, well,
that's a little bit of an issue for me.
Are you hunting for a new graphic?
I have not gotten one. I haven't got the All Elite graphic. First, it was like, oh, it's just wrestlers. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then some people in the office started getting them. And then I got a little suspicious. And now I don't know who I upset in the graphic department, but I don't have one. So, and then every time we do a show in Toronto, I think, gee, that would be a nice time to do it.
Yeah, but you know the old wrestling adage. It's your hometown. Nobody gets over in their hometown.
You know the old wrestling adage, all of this is a bad idea.
100% a bad idea. Like, and I mean, you were smart enough at least to stop doing the actual physicalities of wrestling, so your body should be able to last, a little bit longer, I would think.
I've chosen to take my toll emotionally.
Oh, well, I mean, that just pays somebody else's bills.
Right. Well, and it's also one of those things where I go, oh, physically, I might not have bulging discs, but now I could die of an aneurysm at 36, stressing over a joke.
Just sitting on a park bench, scratching your skin from sores that you've self-induced, telling stories to pigeons. Right?
Yeah. And they said, and everyone will just say, oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, whatever.
And
Moving on.
And then they'll be like, is anyone organizing the celebration of life? And they go, I don't know if we should really. And then that's it. No service, no nothing.
And would they do the celebration of life even before you were gone? Would that be the best part? They're just
I am really against being forced to have fun.
Okay.
All
right.
So
by yourself?
Celebration, like even you say funeral, you could be happy at a funeral. You could be sad at a funeral. Celebration forces you to celebrate.
Like there's dancing involved.
And there has to be, or else it wouldn't be a celebration.
Would you show up would you ever fake your own funeral?
It sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
I do want to leave strict notes.
Really?
Well, as you know, as I've said to you today, I am currently in Peoria.
Yeah.
And yesterday I stopped by the statue of Richard Pryor. And I looked at it and I went, wow, you do all that and you can still have a statue that sucks.
I mean, welcome to America.
Yeah, really. You have to do so much to get a statue here.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, they moved right past graphic.
Right.
They're like, screw it, we're going to get you a statue instead.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the angle you push for. You're like, listen, if y'all aren't going to give me a graphic, can I just like wheel out this statue with me everywhere I go?
You just leave it here next to me and go, see, look.
You know what'll happen. You'll get replaced by the statue.
Sure, you know what? Fine by me.
You'd just be stuck doing voiceovers for the statue at that point.
Yeah. Yes, like the Hall of Presidents.
Amazing. All right. So, in all serious, how has AEW been going? And here's my first question for you. Why is Tony Kahn so misunderstood?
Well, he's a very complicated individual. And I would also say he has such a depth that I would say multiple people understand him in different ways.
Okay.
The extent of our relationship has really been talking about defunct sitcoms from the 90s. And whatever you think he knows about wrestling, and he knows every single thing, even on the indies. He knows people where, how is it logistically possible for you to even know this? He also knows so much about entertainment in general, old show business, old comedy. And then obviously, he's got football and soccer to deal with too. So I think he's many things to many people. And we're all currently having a meeting deciding what those things are,
I was going to say, where do you fall on that spectrum? What is he to you?
He has been so nice to say, come in and do kind of whatever you want. Here's this framework, and then you're on your own, which, is certainly what I was looking for. It's certainly what I've always operated on. So he's certainly wise in that sense to figure out, who to be hands-on with and then who to be hands-off with in terms of what he needs and what he wants.
Well, that's the other company where there should be a lot more hands-off. But anyways, do you think, now you say that, but is that kind of a bit of a detriment to the company and to the business of the business itself when you kind of like just let the boys run amok?
Well, I don't think that he's letting them run amok. I think he knows, you bring in Eddie Kingston to do what Eddie Kingston does.
Right.
Or else why bring in Eddie Kingston? You wouldn't put him in a hat and suspenders, And I think he's really good at seeking out individuals and letting them be that person. And I look at Orange Cassidy and I look at Hook, and I can't see them existing like this in any other company. But AEW, you look at Danhausen, for God's sake.
And not if I
you look at him and then you'll squint.
Yeah.
And another great example is letting people explore until they find themselves. And I think of Tony Storm. I really can't think of a better example than that. Who, again, nowhere else would that be possible.
Yeah, so, I couldn't imagine, because I think that there's a lot more control, and maybe it's under the thumbness, I guess, if it were. But then there's also the kind of reverse, the payoff from it is that the way that I've always described it is that the WWE is a TV show about a wrestling company, whereas that you've got AEW or WCW or ROH or any of these other, they're a wrestling company that puts on a TV show. If that makes any sense.
Yes.
You know what
absolutely.
I mean?
Yes. And I think, I don't know, I think you find characters or personalities of people that connect a lot more deeply to what they're doing on the show because they have some sort of ownership over it.
Right.
Hey is basically me and 3 sheets of paper and usually one cut, no editing, and a prayer. So, it's you have to be very disciplined. You have to set your own rules and boundaries to get something like that together. And I think he knows that when he brings people in.
Have you ever had one of those boundaries where you were like, "Oh, I can't ask this." You know what I mean? Was it like a between two ferns moment?
It's, people's sexuality or race. I usually clear it ahead of time, just as a point to make me okay. But I will often be stopped before I even get to the question. And they go,
Really?
yeah, no problem, whatever you want. And I have been quite shocked and surprised by how open people are on the show.
What's been the biggest one for you?
I think the one we just did with Will Ospreay is amazing. Talking about being on the spectrum and talking about how to be an example for people and answering it in the most endearing way possible. And I think that's another example of the freedom of AEW. Cannot think of another company where you would be able to be asked that question or to be able to answer, and then it hit so well online, and people are going, "Oh, my kid is autistic, or I'm dyslexic," and whatever. And it's like, "Thank you for saying this." And you're like, "Oh, how did this show do a public good?" It really backfired.
Well, I mean, listen, nobody ever really thought that those Jerry Lewis telethons were doing public good either, but apparently money went to somebody.
By the way, I just found out The Day the Clown Cried has been donated to Congress, but they're not planning on doing a screening. They're keeping it for educational purposes. So now I have to pretend to be an academic to see this damn thing.
Or get invited to the White House.
Either way, yes.
Maybe that's what it is. It's like, yeah, they're just having private screenings in the Oval Office of this thing.
Oh, I gotta see this. But and then another example would be the best is I try to go in saying like, what's the stupidest thing I can ask? And then it backfires where I get the most insane answer. And my favorite example is asking about Man on the Moon and finding out Jim Ross had heat with Danny DeVito.
Of all people.
And that made me feel like I'm going to get a Pulitzer, I'm breaking news here.
Oh, wait, you became a journalist all of a sudden?
As far as I'm concerned.
Because,
Daily Show, like 70% of wrestling fans get their news from AEW.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. Yes, I can, actually.
And that's the end of it?
Yes. They think things are like blurted out. People think, things are scripted sometimes. And I think, sometimes we mention names and people think, oh, that must mean they're coming in. And I'm like, please, we have no guidelines here.
Could you absolutely imagine if we lived in a world where, as soon as you say somebody's name on a show or anything like that, it's tied to it innately.
Yeah.
Like, Hulk Hogan's going to be on here next week. I mean, this isn't fucking happening, but I guess if we say it, maybe we can manifest it.
Sure. Well, I've said stuff sometimes, and it's been be careful what I wish for. I ran into Maven a couple weeks ago. I've not been kind to Maven, and he had some items he wanted to discuss with me.
Really? Did you have to have a conversation with Maven?
No, he was good. He was good. Okay. I did Matt Cardona's podcast. I was doing a scene from Undertaker One Dead Man Show, which I was an understudy for. And Maven said, aren't you the guy who was making fun of me on YouTube? And I said, I think you're thinking of Nydia.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it was all clear after that.
Yeah, the joke didn't go over so well with Maven.
Well, no, he was good. He was an asshole. The one wrestler who does YouTube right is probably Maven.
It's unbelievable how he's blown up on there, huh?
Yeah. And great eyebrows. So how can you lose?
I mean, whatever. Talk to me about David Arquette a little bit here, because I mean, is he, first of all, is he your favorite Arquette?
Is he okay? I think our bonding point is that I have so many other favorite Arquettes. His father, Louis, was a great character actor. He was on The Waltons. He's in Waiting for Guffman. He's in The Great Outdoors with Dan Aykroyd. And he was also the voice of Jimmy Snuka, I believe, in Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling.
Really?
So that's a legacy. Him, Brad Garrett, and James Avery all getting in the booth.
There's no room after Brad Garrett gets in that booth, dude.
No, no, he was so hulking. And then, you know, his grandfather was Charlie Weaver.
Mm-hmm.
So I always love talking about that. And I think that's the bonding point. Is he my favorite Arquette? No. Is he the one who talks to me the most? Yes.
And does he feel like he has to, or is that just because the other ones have you on block?
I think the other ones have him on block.
Oh, okay.
You know,
See the
I think
black
there's a
sheep of the
reason he
Arquette
did
family?
Family Feud, and his family was me, Peter Avalon, Jack Perry, and Dalton Castle.
I mean,
Yeah. I think Patricia went, this is a little beneath me.
well, what isn't? What isn't with Patricia? Right? It's classy female. You mentioned Jack Perry.
Yes.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't have, I got somebody from AEW on here.
Sure.
Let's ask the question about the video.
I look like a guy who has a
right. But I mean, you've been around there, and I'm not that, there's going to be whatever, but you were around there. What was the feel after this thing aired? And I'd say at least 80 to 90% of the world was like, this is weird. This is confusing. Why did we do this?
Sure. And I think I was not privy, nor should I be, to what it was or how it was going to be put in the show or any of that. So I was just genuinely curious to find out, what it was going to be. And then it comes out and you go, okay, let's see where this goes from there. Obviously, being used for a story point. And then, but also I get like 30 seconds of that, and then we all have the show to do. Right. You know what I mean? So it's not like the world stopped. It's like we have a million other things going on. And that's the other thing. It's like, with any kind of thing that happens, but personally, professionally, whatever, it's like, guys, we have work to do.
Right. And neither one of those guys that were involved in this video work for the company anymore.
Right. So I just go, okay, that's a thing. It's not something I'm even involved in, So I'm like, all right, if that works for everybody else, but I have jokes to write.
And did you happen to come up with jokes based on that little tidbit there?
No, I try to do jokes that are like not time bound. Because especially when we do, I enjoy the fact that we could watch the Eddie Kingston interview I did 2 years ago, and nothing about it is dated.
Right.
Right. It's not the time. And also the way we film is, who knows when we'll get it and who knows when it'll come out. So I try to stick to the general core of the person, or I just use the most dated material possible. Then it's dated. It comes out dated. Don Knotts is not going to really change. At this point, I think they would have canceled them already if he did something bad.
Is that the hardest part about like doing these types of interviews and whatnot? Is making well, I mean, how can you not? Yeah. You can't. Don Knotts can never be canceled. Could you imagine?
No. Yeah. Well, that's because all his photos are good, and it'll never the headline. It'll be like Don Knotts viciously racist, and then it's not gonna work. No one's gonna buy it, and that's the legacy.
I mean, yeah, it's the guy from the Apple Dumpling Gang. For God's sakes, what horrible things could he possibly have done?
Right. That's worse than Tim Conway, at least.
Well, listen, Tim Conway is an absolute gem. And since we're on the topic of gems, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you if you've seen I don't know if it's, alternative facts or fake news, whatever you want to call it, but they're talking about a Golden Girls reboot, so to speak, with like Tina Fey and, some of the SNL girls and whatnot.
Sure.
Did this get you fired up in a good way or a bad way when you heard about this?
I have, released all hopes and expectations for any kind of reboot in history from now on. I don't even I'm so exhausted about talking about how bad these things are that I can't, I'm like, okay. I mean, I love that, like, they're comparatively, the Golden Girls were not that old. They were like in their 50s. And I'm like, gee, how bad was the soap back then?
Right. How come they didn't do How come they didn't do a show about the husbands? Like, what are all the husbands of those?
Herb Edelman walking around?
Yeah.
And then they did the Golden Palace, and it was just, it was trouble. It was trouble to begin with. I don't know quite what they were thinking, but B was done. B thought she had enough, and she's good. One of the greatest exits in history. There's also a part of me, and this is now I'm hot taking my own hot take. There's a part of me that's like, Golden Girls can't really even hold a candle to Maude. Well, and if we're sitting there and we're talking about shows, really great shows, not only funny, but, well acted, Maude runs away with it.
And I think that if we're talking about it, not just the comedy, the messages of shows back then, because everything was quote, quote, groundbreaking. You had shows that were dealing with interracial stuff. You had them that were dealing with, marital stuff, abuse, all of these things. And then, oh, hey, let's try to put a funny spin on all of this at the same time.
Yeah, it's normally wacky. They're going, we need a laugh there. Abortion, need a laugh there.
You know what I mean? Like one of the craziest things it sticks in my head all the time is watching Good Times. Okay. And you realize that little Penny, who lives down the hallway, little Janet Jackson, lives down the hallway, is being abused by her mother. And there's like iron marks all over her back. And then you're sitting there going, at what point did we all sit around the table for the reads on this and go, yeah, this is going to get laughs.
And then to do all that and then go, and then Jimmy Walker enters.
Dynamite.
He certainly was not toning it down for anyone.
No, unbelievable. Outside of Golden Girls, what was your favorite show growing up?
I love the Muppet Show, but I love SCTV. It's really hard to compete with SCTV. The depth of it, and similarly, we go back to wrestling, a show about a TV show,
right?
A show about television, everything you want. So there's always been that aspect, I think, and it's similar to the Muppet Show, just a gang of idiots and losers trying to put on a show, and why I identified with this industry.
Did you ever feel bad that you never got a call to be on the Muppet Show?
Sure.
Is that a show they could remake?
The Muppet Show?
Yeah.
No, because those kind of dated guest stars don't exist anymore. There's something about having Kay Ballard there where you're like, what? Why? Like, she's not relevant. She was not an A-list at all then. She's doing badly written numbers, but that was the joy of it. And they did try to reboot it a little bit. The closest I ever got, I spoke to through David, the Beretta brothers, who are of the newer age of Muppets. They did like Rizzo the Rat and Peppy the Prawn and the Bear security guard. And they work on stuff, but it's owned by Disney now. The weirdness is gone.
All the quirkiness is out of there. You don't think Jelly Roll could be the new John Denver?
Oh my God. Why? What was that love affair? What were John Denver and Jim Henson doing together in a Volvo in 1982 that they did not only the Muppet Show, but then they did that big Christmas special. They put out a whole album. That was weird. Really strange.
There's the deep dive, ladies and gentlemen. Let's find out the relationship between Jim Henson and John Denver.
Please.
God, that'd put you to sleep right quick, wouldn't
it? Good nap too.
All right. So before you came over to AEW, you did spend some time, wallowing in pestilence that was the indies and whatnot. But you also
a year and a half at WWE.
That's what I was going to say. Speaking of pestilence,
wallowing there too. Let's forget.
Let's talk about that for a second. Yeah. What was your role in WWE?
Well, I guess the world had to end for me to be hired there. They desperately needed somebody to talk at their computer during the pandemic. So they, I got smuggled into a celebrity Zoom call with David Arquette. and they seem to like my stuff. And then, to my understanding, my Twitter feud with Randy Orton is what put the stamp on it for them. So thanks to Randy, and I owe him, I don't know, lunch. I'll take you out for lunch or something. And then it was like, it's always very, and this is the same thing with AEW. It's like, why don't you just come in and do whatever it is that you do? So I was on those watch-alongs. I was on the Bump a lot. I had a little series on the Bump called Wednesday Morning Wake Up, which is a precursor really to Hey in a way. It was all over Zoom. Kevin Nash took the call by the pool, which is a fabulous episode of that. And then we did that comedy special in between nights 1 and 2 of WrestleMania After Dark, which was, I think they told me they wanted 2 hours. And I said, absolutely not. I do not have the capacity. That's insane. And then I wrote 3 hours of material, and then they cut it into, I think, 90 minutes. And that's the only time they ever even had me in the studio. That was their headquarters, which doesn't even exist anymore. Well, because it was all, pandemic business. And then we had a bunch of other things they wanted to do. But then, especially, it was in the middle of all these cuts and this, it's really a tornado there. And you're lucky to get anything done. What I actually got, at least everything I did, I was proud of, which I don't know how many people who've had that experience can say that there, which has been really not. But then it was also the tip of the iceberg in terms of what was pitched and what was worked on and what was, what the ideal was. But it gave me a lot of, it was like, all right, I did this.
One more thing to put on your resume.
Yeah.
Just pat
and
it
then,
up.
It really, and right when that was done, it immediately led to the AEW stuff. So it was like, I didn't really, once I got to AEW, I was more than ready because I had a mountain of stuff that I had been trying to do.
And it was all of the stuff like you said, was being shot during COVID. So there's really nobody around. It's all Zoom stuff. It's pretty much the same thing as shooting backstage for
Hey, right? Well, doing Hey is so much nicer to do it in person and to like feel Jim Ross look at me and go, what is this person's deal? There's some moments where I'm like, gee, I'm so happy this was in person. To just sense a lot of the times, because we've done, as of this recording, we've done 96 or 97 episodes. So it really feels like going on a bunch of blind dates.
Right.
Some people know me, obviously, like Dalton and Danhausen, and you know what you're getting into. But Arn Anderson told me he thought it was just like an actual interview. They're like, come do this. And he's like, okay. And he shook my hand, sat down, and then, everything was in real time. So to be able to, not know people, not really speak to them before, and then hit it off during the course of the show, it's like a little bit of immature magic.
Have you sat down and figured out who you want to have for that 100th episode, that milestone?
Yeah, the big milestone. I think I get a plaque. I think it's appropriate to make the play for Mox.
Yeah.
I think it's, and I don't know if I have any connections to him. I don't know his personal life. I don't know who he's married to. If he knows that, if I know anyone that has an in, I have no clue. But I think it's really to say, hey, this is the 100th episode. Hey. Yeah, you will. If you do this, I promise you, you will never hear from me again. And I think that alone is perhaps a worth it pitch. But there's also so many people on the list that we haven't even got to. I mean, I was just listening it the other day. Kenny, Mercedes, Pac, Okada, Don Callis, Kyle Fletcher, the Infantry, the Righteous, Emi Sakura. And those are just off the top of my head. And then there's people like, I don't know, when we go to LA, put Ken Jeong on the show, get something out of him. He's always milling around when we do shows.
Right.
So, and then there's people you got to have back at some point. I got to have Tony Kahn back because the first time I did an interview with him was my second day on the job. I have a lot more questions now.
I guess so, huh?
Yeah.
So. and I mean, you also, second day on the job, you're like, oh, is this secure? Am I going to be around after this one?
Right.
Right.
I tried to swing for the fences. And I thought,
could you imagine they burn you all right after episode 99?
they're like, this guys, we have to pull the plug.
Yeah, no milestone for this jerk off.
We could not stand this show. I went, oh my, this is gonna 10 episodes max. If I get 10 episodes out, it'll be a miracle, And then here we are. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was just gonna say, what was the escape plan if that happened? If you were, got 10 episodes out of it, and you're like, okay, on to this next thing I'm gonna try, or was there one? It was like, I'm all in on this.
Well, no, before that, I was like, you know what? I did the WWE stuff. I was like, I had it in my head. I was like, AEW, there's nothing I could possibly do there. They're not going to tolerate my idiocy. So I had a bunch of different. My dream was to like just do the indies, and like Ring of Honor or Impact, and but pop in and out. I wish I could say like, here I am for a couple weeks and then I'll leave, sort of like a guest star. And then I was working on a bunch of TV stuff. So I did really think like, all right, that's it. We're good.
Was there a TV thing that you were working on that you were like, you kind of had to throw it up in the air? Like, do I go do this TV thing or do I go to AEW?
No, because I've learned enough with all the TV things. They always look like they're going to happen and then they don't. So you might as well just do 8 things at the same time, because if one of them breaks, it's a miracle.
Right.
Right. I'm at this point, I've been through a lot of, this is going to happen. And then it doesn't, that even when something happens, I still don't feel it. At no point have I relaxed.
Really? Well, I mean, listen, let's go all the way back to the beginning, TV shows, and Splat-A-Lot was a show. You were an actual adult doing this show. Did it ever seem weird to you that being an adult dressed up in this costume and shooting children in the face was a good idea?
Well, here's my defense, is that the kids were, to my understanding, 12 to 14. And I think those are the years that you need a humbling experience.
Wait, could you imagine? So you're saying that some of these parents actually set these kids up on the show as like a scared straight moment?
They all left better men and women. If at 12 years old, 12 to 14, the things I thought about myself were so detached from reality that if I was publicly humiliated, wearing a life vest, being shot at and mocked, and in rubber, they were like, you have to wear water shoes. Just putting on water shoes, I think, is a humbling experience for a 12-year-old. So I thought, look, if we were mocking 6-year-olds, I'd be like, but 12 to 14, I really thought it was a public service.
Well, I think there's probably more of a chance of like that 16 and 17-year-old. They're probably going to get pissed off and like try to fight you or something at this point, I think.
Yes. Although I will say we did a couple episodes with adults, and it was like all the injuries on the show were from adults because they were so terrified of falling. Right. It's always when you try to stop yourself from falling that you get hurt.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the world of professional wrestling, RJ.
Right? And that's why wrestlers never get hurt.
Yeah. Until later. It's an accumulative.
Right. Yeah.
Trust me. I realized this year, RJ, I was looking at houses, looking at some properties and stuff. And this one pops up and it's very nice, very quaint little place next to a lake. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I realized that I'm looking at a retirement community. And then I say to myself, wait, that says 55. That's how old I'm going to be this year, bro. I get to cash in.
Yeah. Yeah.
What better life could there be? Right?
No. I would go there right now. I do love being in the hotels when we're on the road and acting like I have a big novel to finish. I'm like a writer who has writer's block and I have to lock myself in a room. That's my great fantasy. And it'll just be about Tony Schiavone. It's just
Will
That's
that
my
be that'll be the legacy? You'll be, somebody is say at this Holiday Inn Express, RJ
yeah.
City stayed
Oh,
here, put a plaque
I
up
have
like
long-term resident written all over me.
you're their Ernest Hemingway moment.
Mhm. Yeah. He wrote these wonderful things here that have since been removed from YouTube.
Do you ever want to get back into the ring and wrestle?
So when I first started AEW and we hadn't figured out really what I was doing, I was coming in, I think, once a month and doing 4 or 5 episodes in a row. So I did have a lot of time. And I was like, oh, great. I will also do the indies. This will be fun. And I'll do crazy stuff on the indies. It'll scratch that itch and whatever. And I did maybe 3 indie shows. And I was just like, I'm always very like, I love putting the match together. I love having the match. And I love about 5 minutes after it. And I could not care for any other aspect of it. You know?
Why don't enough people implore the acting end into professional wrestling on the story end of it and concentrate more on the physicality of it?
What do you mean?
Well, so like, you get people that go out there and it's like, it's more important to them to be able to do some high spot move, some acrobatic move, rather than tell the story with the acting of it, tell the story with the emotion of it instead.
Because wrestling is often in a bubble made of iron, and it takes a lot for people to get outside of it and see what else is out there. I always hated that old, we're making movies. I'm like, first of all, we are not. Second of all, you know what movies are? They're at the movie theater.
Yeah.
These are movies. We can go watch movies. And second of all, like, don't compare yourself to a movie, because if I'm judging this by movie standards, like, it sucks. We have a lot of work to do. A lot of wrestling is very bad. And I don't say that to judge it. I go, let's make this a lot better. People love saying storytelling and cinema. And I go, have you seen, what was the last film you saw? Like, what are we comparing?
What was the last film you saw?
The last film I saw was It Should Happen to You. It was from the 50s. It was Jack Lemmon's first feature film.
You know that they've made movies since then, right?
Yeah, I know, but they're in color, and I find it arresting to my eyes.
It's too much.
Yes, but it is one of those things where you go, how do we change that? And is it possible to, some people get it physically, they can understand it, but I then in terms of me wrestling and doing the indies, the more intense Hay got. And then and basically once Renee showed up, and it was like, now her and I are doing stuff every week. We're working on a bunch of stuff together. So I have that and Hey, and then I'm always good in the back. Like, if you need an insult, I'm a really good person to come up to. Hey, we're in St. Louis. What do you got? And that's always been, a point of pride for me.
So that leads me to my question then. What does the RJ stand for? Real jerk?
Raul Julia.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. Don't be it's like Rumpelstiltskin Jr.
Yeah, my mother saw One from the Heart.
Okay.
I said, that's gotta be it.
No, but seriously, is it a junior? Have you ever even told anybody what the RJ stands for?
It's available. Okay. I don't know if I want to. Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
look it up.
The best is always, Rim Job is a good one.
It's uncreative.
It is uncreative. Eddie Kingston loves saying RJ shitty. He thinks he came up with that. Okay. Despite me hearing it on the indies 10 years earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. With a clap. Like, does he involve the clap? Because, on the indies, it would have been RJ shitty.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. He's not the best clapper. He doesn't have the dexterity.
Okay.
He can throw a back fist. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all the years of broken thumbs. That's what it is.
Yes.
That's amazing. Is there a talent in AEW right now that you would really like to help? Because I'm talking about the Tony Storm stuff.
Sure.
You've done a fantastic job with that. And it seems like it's created almost like a resurgence of her character all over again. And it is really the most unique thing that AEW is offering right now.
Sure. And I also, I mean, I might even extend that to all of wrestling, because you go, where else is something like this even
100%? It doesn't.
And for her to be, you know, have one kind of success for many years before this, and then to just burst out with this is nuts. I don't know if that I you know, have not experienced that on any other level. But in terms of helping people, there are a lot of great people who you're like, oh, there might be something also crazy here. Harley Cameron, who I had on Hey a couple weeks ago, brought her guitar, did ventriloquism, spoke Chinese. And that's always like the goal of Hey is like, you know, when the comments are, gee, they should really put this person on TV more, then I feel like I've done my job. Right. Lance Archer is another example. Oh my God. For a guy who destroys people, could not have been more eloquent and smarter and really, and you're like, there are so many other things you could do with somebody like that, you know?
So then what is the hidden talent of RJ City then?
Being swallowed up by my emotions.
Okay. Listen.
Probably. I don't know if I
are you how many years have you been begging for help, RJ? What is going on here that you just keep crying out with these statements?
Do I have a hidden talent? No, I think it's a very no, I don't have any hidden talent. I'm trying to get as many of them out as possible. I'm going, will anyone like me? Is this working for anyone at all? I don't think this is the time to hide talents and say, oh, by the way, I also juggle.
Do you?
No, I couldn't. It didn't work.
You tried? I can't. Yeah. I can do like the. I mean, we're not clipping this, but you know, sure. the two balls in one hand type of juggling.
Yeah, and I remember when you do that on the Indies.
Yeah, well, listen, you got to get over. Sure. You know, some people only get paid $20. $40 right here. All right.
We did the old. Did you subscribe to this, by the way? That when you were talking about your pay outside of the locker room, you would add a 0, so anyone walking by didn't think you were a total derelict.
I never did, but I knew a bunch of people that did. Now that was also because I was a bit of a jerk, and I negotiated higher stuff than a lot of other people did.
Yeah.
That was probably not what you should have been paying me, but whatever, you know?
Yeah. I love seeing like old interviews of guys from like the 60s and 70s. And they're like, back in those days, we were only making $40. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
No, it is bad. I also love that, you know, it'll be the year 2545 and a wrestling shirt will still cost $20.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. My favorite one was when you ask people, you know, when you're talking about, because we've all done it, we've all talked about, you know, the shitty promoter, and you're like, yeah, but oh, don't worry, I got paid. Okay, there's a difference between getting paid and having them slip some gas money in your pocket.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I do recall someone on the Indies. I can't even remember where we were, but I recall some guy, whether he was on some sort of altering substance or he was just having a good time, completely forgot and paid everyone twice.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's never happening again. I think that was the last show he ran.
It would have had to have been because he busted his payroll for the next show already.
You remember, I don't know if you were on this show or not. I can't even remember where it was, obscure town, new promotion, and it turned out the booker was like a 14-year-old being backed by a woman who was not his mother.
No.
I wrestled. It was me and Joey Valentine. It was the Wild Stallions. We wrestled the Gym Rats, Scotty O'Shea and Alex Bruno. Trying to think who else was on the show. Bobby Bass was definitely in the audience, but it was a thing where I mean, they took a bath on it, but it was this kid. It was a 14-year-old kid in a suit. And this woman was writing checks, and we could not cash them for a whole week. We had to hold on to them first before we cashed them.
I can remember one time I worked on a show. We were small town upstate New York or something like that. And myself and my tag partner at the time, Magnus, drive up. We drive up from Toronto to go to this the show just in time to get there to find out that the winter storm that was going through canceled. Like ring crew couldn't make it through up to there. Us two dummies went there, and we said to ourselves, well, you know, listen, the show's not happening. Maybe we can make it back to Toronto in time for last call, whatever. And we get all the way back. Literally, I've got my head out the window because the winter storm was hitting so bad you couldn't see the road. But the promoter actually sent me a check, like sent me my pay in check form. And I think I never cashed it. I think it's still sitting in a box somewhere. It's for like, you know, $150 or something like that he sent me. But it was just the fact that like you sent me a check. This is crazy. I was like, I'm not going to cash this.
No, and adorable. I feel
right?
I would feel bad at the bank. I don't even want the bank people to know I'm doing this.
Yeah, right. You know how long I had to drive to get this thing?
Do you remember it may have been the last time that you and I ever wrestled? The worst, can I just say it was like the worst show ever? What would that be to you? What would you consider that?
That you and I wrestled on? Oh, it would have been a fair show for sure.
Correct. Yes, warmer.
But which one is the question?
So, and I can't remember the name of the town now. I really regret not writing these down. But it must have been you in custom against me and Hornet, Daryl, who's now
in the rain.
In the rain.
Wearing hoodies.
Yeah. We all had sweatshirts on.
Yes. Dude, I tell this story because that was the story. The finish was me hitting Hornet with a choke slam where we literally like held onto the rope because it was so slippery. They used a vinyl canvas on the ring and I lifted him up and gently
coming off.
Yes. Yeah. Gently placed him on the mat so that not to slip and hurt himself. Oh,
it was a tag team match where every wrestler was 1992 Andre the Giant. That's what, because it was so slippery that like you didn't even want to move.
Yeah.
Because you would just twist your knee or something. It was like paranoia. And then these people were, no one was out there. And it's like, who are we doing this for? I'm not doing it for me anymore.
Yeah. This is the question. Like, why do we do that stuff?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why is that the badge of honor in pro wrestling?
I mean, I'm not happy talking about it now. I don't look at the window and I'm like, gee, I'm glad that happened. I'm like, that was as stupid now as it was then.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not the first time it's happened, and it probably won't be the last time it happens either. I mean, for me it will, and for you it will, but for other people, they're going to tell these stories.
Yeah. You know? And I also think about, because we just lost Big Mac, just passed away. He had that ring that everyone had been in. Allegedly, Andre the Giant was in that ring at one point.
Well, listen, we all know that ring was stiff enough that it was probably the only ring that could have held Andre the Giant. That's for sure.
That ring was inoperable at best. And I loved Mac. I love being in that ring, but like, dear Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember people getting like bumping and feeling a bolt hit the back of their head.
It happened to me. It literally happened to me one time. I was wrestling Sin. I'm wrestling Sin Bodhi, Nick, in one of these ring and ears matches or something like that. And he's down. We're doing something on the ground, and he goes to pick me up, and I couldn't, like, I felt this tugging on the back of my head, and there was a nail stuck me in the back of the head, and it had hooked. I was like, what's this tension? I'm like, no, what's going on here? It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
This is the longest lasting ring in Ontario. This is like the legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Bobby Bass of rings is really what it is.
Yeah.
Oh boy, wrestling is so fun, isn't it?
It's something.
If you weren't involved in wrestling,
Yeah.
what would you be doing? What was the plan as a kid? Obviously,
Well,
accountant.
it would be some form of entertainment. Certainly. I mean, I was doing acting, TV, comedy stuff. I don't see why I would not have done that.
Some
But in
soft
what
shoe.
I would love to do a soft show. Remember the old days when every actor you knew could also sing and dance? Wasn't even a
Well, I'm
question.
asking. That's why I'm asking. Like maybe that's the hidden talent that RJ has. Maybe he's got a good talent move.
There's a part of me that thinks, oh gee, maybe I sought out that. I also got very jealous. In New York, I would go to the Paley Center, the TV museum.
Okay.
And I got jealous of the people who worked there. To me, they were guarding something special. Because even before YouTube, you could go in there and you would search, and then you go to a viewing room, and they would show you whatever you wanted. And I watched things you just couldn't find anywhere else. And it was just like the most important thing in the world to me. So I could see if this was just like, tomorrow this ended, I would go there in 2 seconds.
You'd be the Ben Stiller working in the museum?
Yes. I say, excuse me, do you want to see these rough cuts from the Dick Van Dyke Show?
Do they even exist still? Not the Dick Van Dyke Show, but those types of museums?
They do. Oh, and I mean, I've been since, and it's basically just YouTube now. They're like, just go on YouTube. It's all here. And yeah, and there's that internet archive. Somebody sent me a Bob Hope special I've been looking for from there. But there are certain things like the King of Comedy. So I'm constantly searching for those like 3 things that are left that are not online.
So obviously comedy is a big thing. When we've talked about this, many times, and you say you went and saw the Richard Pryor statue and whatnot.
Yeah.
And old comedy, way different than new comedy, right?
Yes and no.
Correct.
Yeah.
What are you hyped to any new comedians out there now?
That's a wonderful question.
Because I feel like a lot of your stuff, you cut off at like 1978.
Yes, but then I also loved going to clubs like in Toronto, like going to Comedy Bar and like seeing people who I'd never seen before, and I'm not aware of what their comedy is going to be, and then just be hit by it. There was the sisters called Flo and Joan. They're from England. They came to Toronto to work on their stuff for 2 years. I remember seeing them and they're being fantastic. And then they leave and then they are, like that stuff is outstanding to me. Or just seeing, weird people who I'm like, gee, I could have never anticipated this would have been a thing, like I'm in that, like, there's a guy named Marty Tops. He had a whole song. He brought out his ex-wife and sang to her. And I'm like, this is great.
Okay.
All right. It's worth it to me. There's stuff like that. Just weird, strange things. And then even wrestling wise, there's a promotion called Old Wrestling. Mm-hmm. And the premise is it's wrestling at the turn of the century.
Right.
And it's outstanding.
Yeah. I think who is it? Is it Jake something is got a project that he's coming out with where it's going to be like old political figures wrestling one another. Great. So he's got like George Washington wrestling, James Carver or some some wacky.
Lincoln was a wrestler. Let's find out. Sick of hearing that.
Right? Isn't it the worst?
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine Abe Lincoln as a professional wrestler?
Dude,
4 and
so yeah, I enjoy finding stuff that I just have not seen. You know what I mean?
Okay. And have
I found stuff that I haven't seen?
Like what's the newest one that you were like, how do people not know about this? Like, some old Carol Burnett fucking demo reel or some bullshit?
Yes. Oh my God. There's a show called Strange Paradise. You may have heard of it.
Okay.
It was a Canadian ripoff of Dark Shadows.
Oh.
And it starred Colin Fox, who's a noted Canadian actor. And it was a daily gothic soap opera. So when you're doing a daily soap opera, a bunch of stuff is going to go wrong because you're filming 4 or 5 episodes in a week.
Right.
They're all on YouTube. I'm at the sick point where the comedy I seek is really not comedy at all.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
You're trying to find the absurdity and the comedy and things that aren't meant to be comical.
Right. Yeah. Like what's the saddest? And there's something so I get jealous of the earnestness. Sometimes I'm just so jaded and I'm so self-aware, and that I really enjoy. That's probably why I enjoy putting on the Lawrence Welk show, because I go, gee, they had no idea I was going to be making fun of them now. But isn't there some sweet? Have you ever put on local TV? Especially when you're in the States, and just go, wow, these people are honestly trying their best.
Yes, they're doing. It's always the statement I use, RJ. They're doing the best they can with what they got.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Speaking of Canadian comedy, do you think they could ever redo or even try to do a show like Bizarre again?
So I was just this reminded no one. I was just listening to an interview with John Biner. Okay. Originally it was supposed to be Richard Dawson was the host.
Right.
And I don't know what happened, but then they put John Biner in. I mean, those sort of absurd, weird sketches now feel like what being on TikTok is like.
That's a good call.
That kind of thing. Call. And I also watched Ernie Kovacs, and he would do these little short visual gags. And I'm like, this is exactly what it is. And it does have that feeling of just, scrolling 3-second thing, 3-second thing, 3-second thing. And the comedy of it, and I'm not really a subscriber of cancel culture, because I do believe in, like, anytime I hear people say, like, you can't say anything anymore, it really bothers me, and it makes you just have to say it in the right way,
right?
So that's always my goal. And I've certainly said some ludicrous things on Hey that have been relatively well received, because it's a thing I need to fit, the puzzle I want to figure out. So it's kind of stuff like Bizarre always just got into that breast territory after a while.
Yes, it did. I mean, outside of like the Bigot family sketches that they did.
Yes.
Right.
And I also think about is it maybe, did they do that because there was so little pornography available?
Well, there wasn't, though, because I mean, you still had like the Benny Hill show, which was nothing but just a running boob and an old man.
Well, I'm saying did that show succeed because I was not able to locate breasts on my computer when it came out?
That could very well be, right?
Yeah.
I can remember I was working as a bodyguard for Camila Scott years ago, Canadian TV host, and where they filmed it was out at the CTV studios out in Scarborough, Ontario, outside of Toronto, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about. But even there, that many years later, they still had set stuff from the Bizarre show. And to me, that was great. That was the greatest thing about the job. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like you go through and you could remember, you're looking at stuff and you're like, I remember that from this set, and so on. And it was just like, that's the kind of memorabilia you don't get any of that stuff now with any kind of TV shows, it seems like.
No, there's no sets built anymore.
Right? Yeah. It's all virtual.
Did I ever tell you this? So I had a web series on CTV called The Cynical Crafter. And the best part about CBC was that the building was huge. They kept a bunch of their old stuff. So you would stumble upon stuff, and it was the best. And we were doing an episode of making a bath bomb. And there was so we needed to have a set for me to have a little bath. And we found a giant cutout of Casey from Mr. Dress Up. Just like this, Casey the pup, adorable, creepy face. And we thought, well, we found this. We have to do something with it. So we filmed one where I'm in the bath and then the blinds on the window go up and he's at the window.
So,
and we thought, gee, that was amazing. Now we have to go get it cleared. Right? And you got the poor legal guy. No, because we don't own the rights to Casey. The Mr. Dressup's family does, and you got to go contact them, and they won't do it because it's blah, blah, blah. And you're like, all right, fine. But just to know that we did it.
At one point, you made Casey a peeping Tom.
Right. You know,
a predator.
Just to be around that stuff. Just to be a part of that legacy.
Unbelievable. Speaking of legacy, what is it that you hope? And don't give me some I want to sit on a couch and talk to a therapist answer. What do you hope your legacy is going to be inside, outside of professional wrestling, acting, entertainment, so to speak?
I get weird about it. I don't know. I just want everything to be done at a certain point.
Right.
You know?
But will it?
Well, I feel like people are too sometimes concerned about the legacy and then, try to retrofit it.
Right.
And I also, to a point, I don't know, in the sense that for a while, a lot of stuff you dream and hope and you want this. And then the closer you get to it, you're like, gee, that's not what I wanted at all. That's kind of shitty. And then a bunch more things open up that I couldn't have planned that turned out to be fulfilling and successful and whatever. So I got really big on not being too tied to my plans.
Okay.
So I can't feel like I want to be too tied to my legacy either. I hope all this stuff remains available. I don't know how digital media, it could be swiped one day. That freaks me out. Should they put all episodes of Hey on Max? Probably.
But they'd have to give you a graphic for that to happen.
And then this is the conundrum. I just want to say on my tombstone, did not get a graphic. Maybe when I die, they'll post one that said RJ City is definitely not all elite.
That's where you're going to get the graphic. Right. And it won't even be a picture of you. It'll be a picture of your tombstone.
Yeah. And now I'm afraid of it's been such a running bit that I'm like, gee, what if I get it now and I've got nothing to hang my hat on?
Right. At this point, do you even want it?
No. At this point, after Sanjay Dutt gets one, who cares? Right? It's like having tattoos. I don't know if you have tattoos, but it's the only way to stand out now is to just not have a tattoo.
It's the reason that I don't wear sleeves, is so that I can fit in with the cool kids now.
Right. You see, I made the same mistakes you did, children.
Well, what you would have to do is you don't get any tattoos anywhere, but you get a giant piece on the side of your neck or your face. This has become the new thing. It's before it was, you'd run out of real estate on your body. And so, that's when you got your neck and your hands. But now this is the starting point.
It's avant-garde. It's this movement. What if we start there?
Yeah, it's the equivalency of it's the new ECW of life now. We're going to start the match with a chair shot.
Yeah. And if I know anything about ECW, it ended well.
Well, it ended.
Yeah, well, it got cut off by Roller Jam, quite frankly.
RJ, this has been a blast, and I'm just looking at the time, and we've already gone over an hour, and we haven't talked about really anything at all.
Is there anything else you needed? I mean, do you?
No, we're good.
The law. Do you need that? I mean, is that what we're doing here?
Dude, here's one of the things when we did the show before, that seemed to be a great big thing. Get everybody to say a bumper for you, blah, blah, blah. And out of all the people I've had on the show, it's the one thing that I just have not bothered to do ever on this one.
Let me give you one. Let's give one, and then you can play it every time.
Tremendous.
Okay, you ready? Yeah. Hello, this is RJ City, and you're listening to Live Audio Wrestling. Maybe rethink your decisions.
It's perfect.
There you go.
I mean, it's not good. It's one take. That's the beautiful thing,
Well, and that's professionalism,
And it's, I tell people all the time, I've seen a lot of good matches. RJ's never been in any of them, but I have seen a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going for bulk at that point.
That's right. Amazing. RJ, thank you so much for joining me, brother. Always a blast, always a pleasure. I wish you nothing but the world of success. I mean, I don't even know if you like oysters, but let's make the world yours. Huh?
Thank you. And the life is like an oyster. A third of the time is like a bad vagina.
A third?
Thank you. And if anyone has links to these indie matches that Tid and I are talking about, please flag them and have them removed from YouTube.
Yeah, really like seriously, like start complaining. We don't need those out there.
Thank you.
RJ, always a blast. Thank you so much. To everybody else, this has been TID's Kick in the Head on Live Audio Wrestling. Stick right there. We're going to be right back to wrap this whole thing up.